Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. So, will the USA, will America defeat Iran in a war? So, there's something very interesting the Gemara talks about in a few places, and it talks about this war between Edom and Paras before the coming of Mashiach. So, what's very interesting is Erev Shabbos, we just started in Daf Yomi, we started the Gemara of Avodah Zarah, and on Beis Amud Beis, on page 2b, it talks about this war of Edom and Paras, and then on that Shabbos, so then Erev Shabbos is that daf in Avodah Zarah, and then on Shabbos, that's when Trump authorized the U.S. military to take the B-2 stealth bombers and destroy some of Iran's nuclear facilities. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at this Gemara. It's very interesting. There's a very interesting Tosafos there. And I'll tell you a little bit about what the Gemara says. So what basically happens is after the Gemara is telling a story of what happens after Mashiach comes. So after the whole world recognizes that there's only one God, that Hashem rules the world, the other nations come to get their reward. So the first nation that comes is the Roman Empire. And in the modern world, it's probably the Western Roman Empire that began in Rome. The power of Rome now is probably the USA, is America. And then the Eastern Roman Empire that began in Constantinople by Emperor Constantine, the modern power of the Eastern Roman Empire is probably Russia. So we'll see here. So the first nation that comes is the Roman Empire, and they say they want a reward. They say everything they've done is to help the Jews learn Torah. So they say they built all these great marketplaces. So what's interesting is if you look at the world now, we have these amazing marketplaces. You can go to like a Target, you can go to Walmart, you can buy Amazon online, you can go to these shopping malls. So it makes life easy for everyone. We have all these, massive marketplaces, and it does make life easy. Then it says they built all these bathhouses. So if you think about it, what the Roman Empire has done for thousands of years is they created this system of plumbing, and it's really made life more civilized. So they've created all these sewer systems and plumbing. So in the modern world, we have like drinking water treatment plants and then wastewater treatment plants to take away the wastewater, building all kinds of reservoirs to store fresh water for people to drink. And they built these massive systems. And then people can go to spas, or they can have their own swimming pools or hot tubs or whatever. But it's all because of building out this massive system of plumbing, city by city. And the third thing they say they've done is that they've amassed all the silver and the gold. So if you can look at places like Fort Knox or the Federal Reserve, where there's massive, collections of all the gold and the silver. So they come to get the reward because they say we did all this so the Jews could learn Torah. But Hashem says, no, you did it for yourselves. So Rome goes away, and then the next nation that comes in is Persia, and then they say they want the reward. So they go through their list. They say we built all these bridges, we've conquered many cities to build our empire. We've waged all these wars, and all this was, to create peace and stability so the Jews could learn Torah. And Hashem says, no, you did it all for yourself. So then the Gemara asks, why are these the first two nations to come? What is the importance of these first two nations? And the Gemara says that these nations will be around at the time of the coming of Mashiach. So then we have this very interesting Tosafos. So if you look right here, it says, Mashka Malchu Saiku ad Ase Mashiach, that these kingdoms, these empires, they were drawn out until the coming of Mashiach. So we said, as I said before, so Edom, we have the USA, we have Europe, we have Russia, Rome, Ukraine, all these, places that Edom has, the spreading out of the Roman Empire is still around. And then the Persian Empire is Iran. So it says, V'had de Amrinan, and so we learn I believe it's a brisa. It says, Asida Paras Shetipol Biyad Romi. It says that in the future, Paras, Iran, will fall into the hands of Rome. So Hainu, Samuch Lebias Mashiach. And this is going to happen close to the coming of Mashiach. So Kidam Rinan, this may be, let's see, this thing, we learned it in a Mishnah, and here it's quoting the Gemara in Sanhedrin, and this is Daf Sadi Ches, so it'll be 98 on page 2, page B. And it says, Asida Malchus Romi, Shetipshot Al Kol Haolam Tisha Chodashim. So it says that after Rome defeats Persia, so it could be what it's talking about is after America defeats Iran at some point, so then Edom or Rome will spread over the whole world for 9 months. And these 9 months is what's called the Birthpangs of Mashiach. So then we're going to go, the next place we're going to go is we're going to go to the Gemara in Yuma. This is the Gemara about Yom Kippur. And we're going to see something really fascinating here. And it's going to have a whole debate of this war of Edom and Paras of who's going to win. Is it going to be Edom that wins, or is it going to be Paras or Persia that wins? So let me bring this up here. So this is in Masechta Yuma, and it's on 10a, if you want to look it up. So it says, Amar Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi, Amar Rebbe. So Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi says the name of Rebbe. He says, Asida Romi Shetipo Biad Paras. So here they begin the discussion, and Rebbe says that in the future, Rome is actually going to fall into the hands of Persia. So Shnei we have a pasuk, we have a verse that says, Lachein Shimu Atzas Hashem Asher Ya'atz Edom Umakshavosav Asher Chashav Yoshvei Seiman Im Lo Yitzchavum Tzeire Hatzon Im Lo Yasim Alehem Nevehem. All right, so what does this mean? So it says, now hear the plan that Hashem has devised for Edom and the thoughts he has considered for the residents of Taman. Taman is the name for Yemen, and this is generally referring to all the Arab countries. So surely the youngest of the flock will drag them away. Surely their habitation will be appalled due to them. So this is from Yirmiyahu, this is from Jeremiah 49:20. So here it's talking about Taman, it's talking about the Arab nations, and it's talking about what we're going to assume here is the religion of Yishmael, which is Islam. All right, so let's see what it says here. So it's talking about the youngest. The youngest is going to win. So what's that mean? So Maskif la Rabba Bar Ula. But Rabba Bar Ula, he objected this. He said, My mashma dechai tziire hatzon. What is the youngest of the flock? What does that mean? Parasu. It means it's Persia. So Diksiv, ha'ayu asher isa ba'al karanayim malche madaya faras. So this is talking in the book of Daniel. It's 8:20. And it says, the ram that you saw sporting 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So there's a vision, there's a vision that Daniel has, and he sees this ram that has 2 horns, and this represents the coming of the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire was a combination of 2 countries, Media and Persia. So then it says, but you could say that the youngest of the flock refers to Greece, who then overthrows the Persian Empire, right? So it says, because it says Ve'ema Yavan, but maybe let's say this is Greece, not Persia. Diksiv V'hat Safir Hasair Melech Yavan. Because then there's another vision in Daniel, in the next verse, in the next pasuk, and it says, no, the goat, so it's giving an explanation of who's the goat. This goat is the king of Greece. So it's a vision about Alexander the Great, who begins the Greek Empire, who's going to overthrow the Persian Empire. So the conversation continues. So it says, Ki Selek Rav Chaviva Bar Surmaki. So it says, Rav Chaviva Bar Surmaki, he came up from Babylon to Eretz Yisrael. He came from the yeshivas in Babylon, modern day Iraq, and he came to Israel. And he says, Amre Kame Dahaku Me Rabbanan. And he says this before the Torah scholars in Israel. He says, Amarle, he says to them, Mandala Yada Feroshe Karae Mosev to Yufta Lerebi. So he says, one who does not know how to interpret verses is so arrogant that he raises an objection to the great Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi. So what he's saying is, he's saying that Rabba Bar Ula, he misunderstood what Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi was saying, what Rebbe was saying. So he says this, he goes, my Tziire Hatzon. What's this mean, the youngest of the flock? Zutra Diakochi means this is the youngest of the brothers. So this is talking about Persia. Desani Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef teaches, he says Tiras. It says Tiras, so this is the descendants of Yafes, who's the son of Noah. And it says Tiras, the son of Yafes, that's Zoparas. That's talking about Persia. So Persia, Iran, they're descendant, they're same descendants of Yafes. So all the European nations and Persia, they have a common ancestor. Persia is not one of the Arab nations. They're not descended from Ishmael. They are descended from the same son of Noah that the European nations are descended from, of Japheth. Right, so Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Amar Rebbe Yochanan Mishum Rebbe Yehuda ben Rebbe Eli. So he says Asida Romi Shetipol B'Yad Paras. So he says in the future Rome is supposed to fall into the hands of Paras. So in this interpretation, Rome or America would fall into the hands of Iran. So Kol v'chomer, all the more so. So Ummah mikdash rishon shebenuuchu b'nei Shem v'hechrivuchu kasdim. So in the first temple that was built by King Solomon, it was built by the children of Shem, and it was destroyed by the Kasdim, by the Babylonians. So the children of Shem, this refers to Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov. So this refers to the Jewish people who built the first temple, and it was destroyed by the Babylonians. It was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. So Naflu Kasdiim biyad Parsiim. But then the Babylonian Empire, they fell into the hands of the Persian Empire. So then Mikdash Sheni Shibenauchu Parsiim Vehechrivuchu Romim. So now the second temple, at first, the building of the second temple was authorized by the Persian king Koresh, known as Cyrus. And then Cyrus, because anti-Semites started speaking out against the building of the temple, so he stopped. He went back on his original command. But then after the story in the Megillah Esther, in the days of Mordecai and Esther, after the wicked Haman was destroyed, then Achashverosh, and then the son of Achashverosh and Queen Esther, Darius, allowed for the rebuilding of the second temple. So what it's saying here is Persia was the nation, the empire that actually helped build the second temple, where Rome, under Vespasian and Titus, they came and they destroyed the second temple. So Eino din sheyiplu Romim biyad Parsiim. So shouldn't it really be that Rome should really fall into the hands of Persia? Persia helped build the second temple and Rome destroyed it. So Marav, so Asida Parashatipo biyad Romi. But Rav says no. He says in the future, Persia is actually going to fall into the hands of Rome. So Amrule, Rav Kahana, Rav Asi Rav. So Benoye biyad Sasore. So should the builders fall to the destroyers? How could it be that Rome, that destroyed the temple, how could they be victorious over the Persians who helped build the temple? So Marlachu says, no, Gezeres HaMelechi. No, this is the decree from Hashem. This is a royal decree that Hashem has made. So Ikata Amre, those who say, so Amar in Hunami ha kasisre be kanishta. But then there's other people that say the opinion is like, no, the Persians weren't so great either, because during the Persian Empire, they were Zoroastrians, and they were anti-Semitic, and they destroyed a lot of synagogues. So they're really no better than the Romans. So you can't use this logical idea of the builders and the destroyers. So Tanya Nami Haki. So it's also taught in a Brisa, Asida Parash Etipol Biyad Romi, that in the future, Paras, so in our case here, we're talking probably about modern day Iran, will fall into the hands of Rome, which would be the USA. So Chada Desasri Be Kanishta. And one of the reasons is that they destroyed synagogues. So Persians, they weren't much better than the Romans. So Va'od Gezeres Melechu Sheyiplu Bonim Biyad Sosrim. But Hashem made a gezerah. There's a special decree that Hashem had made that at some point in the future, that the that the Persians are going to fall into the hands of Rome. So it seems like here there's a gezerah that America will at some point in the future defeat Iran in a war. So to Mar Rav Yehuda Mar Rav. So Ein Ben David Ba Ad Shetifshos Malchus Romi Harasha B'chol Halam Kulo Tisha Chodashim. So this is what we saw in Masechta Avodah Zarah. So the son of David, the Mashiach, he's not going to come until the empire of Rome spreads throughout the entire world for 9 months. Shnamar, Lachain, Yitneim Ad, Ace Yoleda, Yelada, V'yaser Echav Yeshuvun Ab B'nei Yisrael. So there is a pasuk in Micha 5:2. It says, therefore, he will give them up until she who is to bear has born. Then the remnants of his brothers will return with the children of Israel. So during Rome's rule over the entire world, it will be like a pregnancy for 9 months. And then at the end of it, we'll see the emergence of Mashiach. So very interesting stuff. So I don't know exactly where we are in the process. It does seem now we're at the beginning of the process because we have this war that started on October 7th between Israel and Iran. And now it's interesting, we see America's involvement, that over Shabbos, that there was American airstrikes into Iran, and we don't know what Iran's full response will be. And then today, President Trump, he was like, I don't know, he was trolling on Truth Social, and he was talking about MAGA, make Iran great again. And it's kind of like hinting at like a regime change, like getting rid of the Ayatollah Khamenei. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. It does seem we're at the beginning of this process. But at some point, there's going to be some war between America and Iran, and America will win. And then you could see them ruling the entire world. Because if they controlled Iran's oil supply, which China and Russia are very dependent on, then America would be, in a sense, they would be all powerful. They would be the most powerful nation in the world, and they would really be able to dictate like what happens all around the world. It's interesting times for sure. We'll have to see what happens. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll see the coming Mashiach soon. And I don't know. We'll just keep learning Torah, keep doing mitzvahs. B'ezrat Hashem, we got to pray for the destruction of Iran's wicked nuclear program. And we really need to pray and do mitzvahs to finally see the release of these hostages from Gaza, and may we see protection, from I don't know all the wicked in the world. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.